Okay, Pauline, you're good to go.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the December meeting of the Development Committee. Before I say anything more, I would ask you to keep your masks on when you're just sitting, and when you're speaking, feel free to drop your mask down because it does muffle. So you'll see me be going up and down, up and down, up and down. So bear with me. And we have the windows open. Thank goodness there's not a howling gale because of the risk. This Omicron is really escalating now. I'm Pauline Grove-Jones, and I will be chairing this meeting of the Development Committee. And for those who haven't attended before, for our public, the officers who provide and present our reports and offer technical advice sit on either side of me at the top table and are on your screens above. So I will ask on my left, Matt, if you could introduce yourself, please.
My name's Matt Stomrovich. I'm Democratic Service Officer, and I've also got Lauren Gregory next to me, who's the new Democratic Service Officer. She doesn't have a microphone, unfortunately.
And
good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members. Philip Rosen. I'm the Assistant Director of Planning.
Morning, everybody. My name is Noel Doran. I'm a solicitor, legal advisor to the Development Committee this morning.
And put those on the screen, please. Just introduce yourselves. First of all, Colin, could you just introduce yourself, please?
Good morning. I'm Colin Rubin, Team Leader in Development Management.
Jamie?
Morning, I'm Jamie Smith, a planning officer in the Development Management team.
And Darren?
Good morning, Darren Mortimer, Norfolk County Council, Highways Development Management.
Did you get that?
Sorry, is my mic a bit quiet?
Yeah, it's doing the judgery thing.
Apologies. Darren Mortimer, Norfolk County Council, Highways Development Management.
Right, Highways Development Management. You got it that time, Darren.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just some housekeeping before we start the formal business. If you hear the fire alarm, this will be for real. So exit either side of the chamber. The officers will lead you out. Please don't run or even attempt to get into the lift. Take the stairs and assemble either in the front car park or at the rear of the building. Would you please make sure your mobile phones are switched off? And if we go on past 11, 11:30, I might allow you to have a coffee break. I just see how I feel. But and the facilities are just outside here. Okay, so now we go on to the actual agenda. Any apologies for absence, Matt?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillors Adam Varley. We have apologies from the local member for Holt, Councillor Georgie Perry-Warnes. And I'm also, whilst I haven't received apologies, I'm also expecting absences from Councillor Nigel Pearce, Councillor Clive Stockton and Councillor Andreas Yassimi.
Thank you. Any substitutes?
None arranged at this time.
I must say yet again, you know, when you're on development committee, you are supposed to find substitutes. Sometimes it's not possible, but we seem to have a steady number of people who just don't appear. So I think we're going to have to tackle that, Matt, at some point.
Yeah, I think in their defence, Chair, that several of these members may be ill and not able to arrange at this time.
Yes, but they could give their apologies for not being here. That's the thing. But still, that's just me. The minutes. You should have had a copy of the minutes of the 18th of November. I won't go through them. I don't normally, but if you are okay with them, do you want me to go through them? Page 1, I'll go through them. Page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, and page 6. Okay, can I have a proposer? Councillor Kershaw, Councillor Fisher to second. Any items of urgent business?
None received.
The order of business will be as it stands. Any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests, please? Yes, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Yes, Madam Chairman. As I am speaking in favour of the shrublands application, I feel that I could be accused of predetermination, therefore I shall declare an interest and I will not be voting.
Thank you. We will note that. Right, I think that's the formal side of that business. We now pass to the officers' reports. And we go to the North Reps application PF/21/2263, pages 9 to 16 on your agenda. And who's presenting? Oh, Colin's presenting. Colin Rubin is presenting this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. So this is item 8 on the agenda, which is application PF21/2263, presented on behalf of my colleague Liz Starling. The application proposes the siting of 4 glamping pods for holiday use at Shrublands Farm camping site, Craft Lane, North Reps. The officer report is found on pages 9 to 16 of the report pack, along with accompanying presentation slides. By way of a quick update pertaining to a matter of clarification, there was a labelling error as shown on pages 2, 3 and 5 of the presentation slides to the bottom right of each slide, which incorrectly labelled the wrong section of land as Shrublands Farm. That has now been deleted from the slides, though of course post-dating the printed version. As such, it's advised to please ignore that label on the printed version. A blue line on slide 3 denotes the land to the east and north of the site, which is also in the ownership of the applicant. The details of the indicative design, dimensions and layout of the proposed glamping pods are provided in the officer report. Again, by way of an update, the applicant has provided a further plan to indicate that the proposed parking for each pod could be located to the side of the pods rather than to the front. I will try and leave this up at the end of the presentation. The application site is currently used as a certified caravanning and camping site to the east of Craft Lane, which allows use of the site by up to 5 vans and 10 tents. Policies Ec7 and Ec10 deal specifically with controlling the location of new tourism development, with Ec7 requiring a sequential approach to its location, with a specific reference made to stating that new build unserviced holiday accommodation in the countryside should be treated as permanent residential dwellings and should not be permitted. Policy Ec10 further states that new static caravan sites and woodland holiday accommodation, which would also cover glamping pods, will only be permitted in limited circumstances and not where they are located within sensitive landscape designations such as the Norfolk Coast AONB. The site does not benefit from planning permission, but instead has operated for many years as a certified camping site, over which the council has no control, subject to it operating within the parameters of the exemption licence. Therefore, given the site's certified status, officers will conclude that the scheme as now proposed should be assessed as a new camping site under policy Ec10, as opposed to a scheme for the extension or intensification of an existing site. With its location in the Norfolk Coast AONB, the proposed scheme is contrary to the requirements of policy Ec10, and the self-contained nature of the holiday accommodation being proposed would also result in the creation of unserviced holiday accommodation, which is also contrary to policy Ec7. Members' attention is drawn to the planning history section, which refers to a similar proposal for the siting of 5 self-contained holiday lodges to be sited on this land, which was under reference PF 921086. Whilst this was admittedly many years ago and thus determined under different policies, the application was refused and dismissed at appeal on the grounds of principal detrimental impacts upon the AONB and landscape and highway safety. In respect of landscape impact, it is recognised that the site appears to lie in a natural hollow and set lower than adjacent land rising to the north with boundary planting. Notwithstanding this, due to their location within the designated AONB, members will note the Landscape Officer's strong objection to the scheme as proposed, along with concerns raised by the Norfolk Coast Partnership in respect of compliance with Ec10 and potential resulting impacts a further 4 glamping pods could have in respect of pressure and impact on this part of the AONB, eroding key features such as tranquility, dark skies and local landscape character. Whilst the accompanying planning statement makes reference to the proposals replacing 4 of the existing pitches, as mentioned, the site does not benefit from planning permission, with the field to the north not forming part of the certified site. The proposed glamping pods on the application site have the potential to result in the displacement of pitches onto the adjacent field, resulting in a more intensive development in terms of pitches, particularly as the siting of the pods on the certified site will make it difficult for the remaining pitches to be accommodated on this site in a satisfactory manner. It is therefore considered that the development proposals will be contrary to policies EC10, EN1 and EN2 of the core strategy. In terms of highway impact, further views have been sought from highways as stated in the report, following their initial response of no objection based on what they thought at the time was an existing site on which existing pitches were being replaced. Revisions to the planning statement recognise the status of the site as certified as opposed to being granted under a planning permission. Following this further information provided, the Highway Authority have now confirmed that they are formally objecting to the application on highway safety grounds, given that there is no indication that the certified site will be given up in place of the proposal, thus resulting in additional units on the site. The Highways Authority have also raised the appeal decision in 1992, with the inspector concluding that he would expect a greater use of the site over a longer period as a consequence of the permanency of the proposal in comparison to the certified use. As such, the current high objection is made on the basis that Craft Lane serving the site is considered to be inadequate to serve the development by reason of its poor alignment, restricted width, lack of passing provision and restricted visibility at adjacent road junctions and lack of pedestrian facilities. Thus, any increased use would be detrimental to highway safety. Reference has been made within the planning statement to the development helping to support the existing rural business, which comprises of a mixture of agriculture and tourism, and the economic benefits which would accrue from this. However, no detailed farm diversification case has been presented, and any such economic benefits will need to be balanced against the significant harm which would result from new tourist accommodation being permitted within this sensitive landscape designation. Overall, to conclude, the officer recommendation is one of refusal for the reasons stated on page 15 of the report, along with the additional reason of being contrary to policy CT5 of the core strategy. Thank you, Madam Chair. As mentioned, I will just now try and share screen and flag up the revised site layout plan that we have been sent in.
Thank you, Councillor Rubin. Officer Rubin. I'll get it right one day. I'll get council and officer right. I will. I promise.
So hopefully you should be able to see that now. And that just shows the revised layout plan as recently sent in by the applicant. And what it's done is it's moved the parking from the front of the pods to the side of the pods.
Thank you. Now I'll go to the parish representative. Mr. McKay, are you here? Would you like to come up and take a seat on the end of this bench? Now, if you can push the second one in, that's it, well done. And you have 3 minutes from the time you start speaking. We'll tell you when it's up, time's up.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Alistair Mackay, Chairman of Northreps Parish Council. I just came along to emphasise that the Parish Council had no objections to this application, and indeed received no objections either. Having looked at the highways report, where I looked online, I thought it was getting slightly carried away about the narrowness, etc., of Craft Lane. All roads into Northreps and many other villages come to that are narrow. Northreps is a working agricultural village. We have very large pieces of agricultural machinery going through, sugar beet lorries, and indeed up to about 15 years ago in the centre of the village there was a turkey processing plant, and we had all the associated articulated lorries and that type of thing using Craft Lane, which is the main road from Northreps to Southreps. The other thing I'd like to say is that although obviously this application is in an area of outstanding natural beauty, it's difficult to describe without you perhaps doing a site visit, but nobody can see it from any property or anywhere else. You've got to be walking down the lane and really have to have a good look to see where this site is. But once again, just to emphasise that we've received no objections whatsoever to this application. Thank you.
Jeremy Youngman, if you'd like to come up, please. Same for you, 3 minutes from the time you start speaking. And it's the second button in from the right. Set. Thank you.
Jeremy Youngman, applicant. Thank you for letting me speak. A short history of Shrublands Farm. My grandfather moved to Shrublands in 1930, 38 years before North Norfolk was designated AONB status in 1968. My parents took on the arable business in the 80s and opened the campsite we are talking about. I followed into the business, now growing sugar beet, oilseed rape, malting barley and milling wheat. I have diversified into crop spraying and fertilizer spreading on neighbouring farms. With other family members, we offer B&B and camping to our enthusiastic holidaying guests. It is my wish to add the 4 glamping pods to offer a wider choice of high quality, affordable accommodation. The proposal is a small scale development on my campsite that will add a lot of value to our business and is vital for our continued survival post-Brexit and post-farm subsidy. My son, a serving member of the Royal Marine Commandos, wants to be the 4th generation to farm at Shrublands when he leaves the forces. I've looked on the internet and I wanted to know the actual definition of the AONB. The purpose of the AONB designation is to conserve and enhance the natural beauty of the designated landscape, also meeting the needs and regards for those who live and work there. This proposal satisfies all these requirements, and I ask the committee to support my proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I now go to local member, Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have 2 letters that you and the Head of Planning have actually agreed that I may read out. The first one is from North Norfolk District Council, Deputy Chief Planning Officer, dated 5th of April 1982, in which he says, My area planning officer has inspected the site, and his general comments is that Church Lane, North Reps is a bit confusing because the farm is registered in Church Street and actually covers Hungry Hill, Craft Lane. So I think we can pass on that. Like many roads in North Reps, is rather narrow and not very convenient for the passage of caravans. Having said that, however, we would not wish to raise a formal objection to this proposal, although its use solely for motorised caravans would be preferable. Right. Lovely logo. Can I show it to everybody, please? Right. I also have a letter of support to read out. And this is from Mrs. Sarah L. Jeans, who is the licensee of the Foundry Arms in North Reps. I would like to put on record my full support for planning application PF 212263 for the siting of 4 glamping pods on the existing camping site on Craft Lane, North Reps. As the licensee of the Foundry Arms Public House in North Reps, I'm all too aware of the devastating impact COVID pandemic has had on local businesses. In these very difficult times, I believe that local business should be applauded for having the courage to invest in their business with the view to bringing more visitors to the local area, which in turn will provide a much needed boost to the local economy. It is only by having the foresight to diversify business operations that many local businesses will be able to trade into the future. This will help the flow of visitors coming for many years to come. Right. I should like to draw members' attention to the things that cause me concern in the officer's report. Point 1. Can I draw members' attention to page 8 of the presentation? It's headed View of Site Access Craft Lane. This is the only piece of land covered by this application. Any other land should be disregarded. As you can see, it is completely screened apart from the gateway. Point 2. Referring to further comments from the landscape officer, yes, I accept that Craft Lane is narrow, but it is part of the bus route to North Walsham. And in order to assist pedestrian safety, the applicant is prepared to create a footpath on land he owns to link up with the County Council footpaths at the village centre at the end of Craft Lane. Point 3. Referring to page 10, beginning the planning statement, I find this muddling, confusing. Basically, all the applicant is trying to do is to change the touring element of this 30-year-old approved campsite, of which officers have evidence, to a site of glamping pods. There will be less towed caravans or motorhomes struggling down Craft Lane, and there will be less pitches. Glamping pods fit into the rural landscape considerably better than shiny white caravans. Point 4. Norfolk Coast Partnership on page 11 referred to glamping pods. These are hidden amongst the barns attached to the farm operation and about half a mile away. I repeat, the camping site is the only piece of land covered by this application. Point 5. DEFRA advice. Sorry, I've missed this out. This diversification is vital for farming companies' survival. This is not a huge operation contracted out by an absentee landlord. This is a small family farm of 300 acres. They are currently enjoying the EU subsidy, also known as Basic Farm Payment Scheme, which is being phased out over the next 7 years. DEFRA is advising and recommending farms to diversify to make up the shortfall. Finally, I might suggest that members would like a site visit, but that's up to the members. But I do think members need to see the lie of the land. This is part of the Cromer Ridge. This site is tucked in at the bottom of a steep hill. And incidentally, the reference to Munsley Beck is incorrect. The Beck, or more accurately, the River Mun, rises at Templewood, some half a mile away. The watercourse shown on the plan is in fact a land drainage ditch. Members, I beg for your support in allowing this application for my reasons as set out on the agenda, and trust that today's explanation for these reasons will give you all a better understanding of this site, and if not, please visit the site as I have asked. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Officer Ralston wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. My apologies for interrupting the members' debate. I've been informed by the applicant's representative that they were told that they would also be able to speak today. I noticed that Mr. Youngman didn't cover his entire 3 minutes. At your discretion, Chairman, before we enter full debate, you may wish to entertain further representations from the applicant's agent.
That's fine. How much time, extra time do we have?
I'm afraid, Chairman, I wasn't running a clock on Mr. Youngman, but I know that he was relatively brief. So with reasonable discretion through you, Chairman, we normally share 3 minutes. It's a maximum of 3 minutes. So you may allow some presentation from the representative.
Who is the representative, by the way?
Amber Slater from Brown & Co.
If you'd like to come up, yes, I
Thank you.
will allow you to speak. We are allowing you to have the full 3 minutes. So if you'd like to just push the.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This site has been in continuous use as a caravan and campsite for approximately 30 years. As already discussed, there is a licence in place under the Certified Caravan and Camping Scheme, which permits 5 motorhomes or camper vans and up to 10 tents. As highlighted in the planning submission, the 4 glamping pods would be instead of 4 motorhomes under the licence and not in addition to them. It's not considered that the application would cause harm to the OMB due to the low design of the proposals, the existing level of significant natural screening around the site, as well as the topography itself, which further shields the scheme from views into the site. Highways didn't object to the application as set out in their original response. However, a further opinion, as previously discussed, has been submitted, which now objects to the scheme based on the fact that the pods are now seen as additional. As stated, this is not the intention of the applicant, with the 4 pods replacing 4 camper van pitches. It's not considered that there will therefore be any additional impact on the surrounding road network. On the point of the footpath raised by the highways officer, though, the applicant would be prepared to install a footpath along the appropriate stretch, which could be imposed by an appropriate condition. The parish haven't objected, nor have the Coast Partnership, and there were no objections from local residents. Councillor Andrew Fitchell is supporting the application, has called it in due to the lack of harm caused the OMB and the benefit to the existing business and the local economy, which will play a vital role in the diversification of the farm, which is considered to be critical for the survival of the farm, particularly so given the last 18 months, Brexit and the removal of farm subsidies. It's also worth mentioning that the scheme would also provide 3 part-time jobs to serve local people to service the pods. It's noticed that the landscape officer has objected. However, it's considered there will be less light pollution due to the less motorhomes and camper vans making regular trips. No external lighting is proposed on the pod, so there will be less lighting, and the design is much more in keeping with the surrounding area than the design of camper vans and motorhomes. So to summarise, the site has been in continuous use for 30 years or so. The applicant is willing to invest in the site to create appropriately designed glamping pods. The proposed pods replace 4 permitted motorhomes and will result in no addition to the permitted number set out in the licence. This, coupled with the clear lack of harm to the OMB due to the complete screening of the site, lack of traffic impact and economic benefits to the applicant's farm, as well as the local area, are all material considerations in the decision-making process today. And I would request that a balanced view needs to be taken that looks at all factors and concludes that there will be no harm caused by the application, and it should be approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, well done, well timed there. Now, anything from the members, please? Right, Gerard, and then Paul, and then Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a good look at this, and I would like to mention that Councillor Fitztillis is a champion of area of, or defender of AONB, and for her to actually sort of champion this proposal, I think is admirable. I don't see a problem with it. It's not like a massive amount of pods. It's only 4, and in these dire times of COVID, we should be applauding farmers and likewise for taking on initiatives to grow the economy back to how it should be. So I'm in favour of this, Madam Chair.
Are you proposing?
Yes, I'll propose.
You're proposing what? In favour of what? Refusal?
Pardon me? Yeah, proposing this development, yeah.
Right, well, we're not to that yet because the actual recommendation is for refusal, Gerard, so we have to go with that first. So, Paul?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have 1 or 2 concerns. If the site is to remain accessible as a CL, albeit with notional restrictions on the number of camper vans or caravans, and I presume the site to the north still continues under whatever arrangements there are for that site, and that is unclear, we're actually potentially, given that these pods are all year use, having an intensification of use of the site. So I have a few concerns there. And of course, they are permanent buildings in the AONB, albeit this is a sheltered site. I'm unclear as to which way I'm going to go on this, but I can see plenty of arguments against at this present moment, unless I hear otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard?
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking with my portfolio holders hat on for sustainable growth. I applaud the diversification we're seeing with farming. I'm acutely aware of how difficult businesses have found this through the COVID regulation, and I note that the Foundry Arms are supportive. Hospitality have had a very hard life in the last 18 months. I cannot see the harm in these buildings. I mean, I would rather see a glamping pod than a caravan personally. I am familiar with the site. It is in a hollow. And DEFRA is encouraging farmers to diversify, and I support that diversification. The removal of cars towing large caravans down the lane, I think, is an improvement. You just have a vehicle arriving here. I don't see any light pollution, and I don't see what damage it does to the AONB, so I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Morning, everyone. I support diversification in farming as a necessary objective to enable them to recover from the pressures of the pandemic. What I think would have helped the applicant's cause in this application is if they had addressed the potential problem of the existing licensed camping under permitted development decamping into the land to the north. I don't see here, if we were minded to approve this, anything which prevents a proliferation or over-intensification of tourist provision on this site. If this is to be a true replacement, then surely we should be ensuring that the applicant gives up any intention or possibility of this being a thin end of the wedge and spreading into the field to the north. I'm also aware that I think the officer has mentioned in the report that there was no farm development plan to justify this in terms of additional income into the operation, but I will take that as read that it is necessary for sustaining the farm. However, it is the duty of this committee, as we know, and I repeat this laboriously as a mantra, that we have to make decisions in accordance with planning policy as set out in our development plan. And we're obliged to do that unless there are material considerations which outweigh the harm that would be done if those policies were breached in granting the application. And I'm not quite sure in my own mind whether that material consideration is made out on this occasion. There are obviously benefits from the site being in a fairly concealed location. But unfortunately, the planning policy doesn't make a distinction between harm in concealed locations and harm outside concealed locations in such a sensitive area. So that is a concern. But I don't know if either Noel or Colin could cast a little bit of clarification on how we could prevent the proliferation on the site into the field to the north. That would be my question.
Okay, well, Philip, you wish to speak?
Yes, please, Chairman. Through you, I'm sure that I can answer Councillor Brown's query, but also I would like to talk to members about the importance of applications that are departing from local plan policy. As Councillor Brown has identified for you, this is a key local plan policy. We are a tourism district, we do support tourism, but we also have firm plan policies that look at the location of tourism. Policy Ec7 is a policy which largely follows intact into our emerging plan in the Regulation 19 consultation that will go forward in January. It does not change substantively. We seek to protect the AONB for the reasons that the members have discussed today. As pointed out by Councillor Brown, Chairman, we need very, very good reasons to depart from this policy. Tourism can take place in the AONB. I've written to members about extensive permitted development rights that already existed and the government's attempts through making measures under COVID practitioners to allow for extended use of sites in our AONB for 56 days. The likelihood, members, is that that will extend as far as COVID does too. So there will be an opportunity for operators such as the applicant to continue using sites under the Caravan and Camping Club licence. I appreciate this proposal is different, Chairman. We're seeking to change and to bring forward a higher quality of offer to tourism in our district. So that would be one material consideration you might bring forward. However, members, you will note that officers do identify harm. So that is the issue of the departure and the great weight that you must apply to depart from adopted and emerging policy. Moving on, Chairman, to answer the question raised by Councillor Brown, what measures could be brought forward to ensure that this does not lead to proliferation and intensification of licensing uses on adjacent land owned by the applicant. Well, I regret to say, Chairman, that's largely a question for the applicant and their representative to answer. Measures that the local authority could consider could be entering into unilateral undertakings with the applicant to support reduced use or no use on the adjacent land. But I note that the applicant has said to the committee today that it is critical for farm diversification that tourism thrives on this site. So I would be concerned about the use of legal agreements on adjacent land, particularly with the government's concerns that I've written to you on, that the council need to be flexible in its use of camping and caravan sites under permitted development allowances. I regret I don't have any proposals in front of us today to tell you how that adjacent land could be used, and largely we should relate the proposals today to the land that we see in front of us in this application. So I don't have any ready answers to give you. I can only suggest that maybe by legal agreement, the council could enter into discussions with the applicant about use and intensification of that adjacent land. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. No.
Thank you, Chair. Just to endorse what Philip has said, the application site is the application site. So adjoining land in the ownership of the applicant is not relevant to the consideration of this application. There may be controls that exist, but the law as it stands enables temporary use of adjoining land for camping for up to 56 days. That's likely to continue, certainly for the course of next year. Obviously, there are enforcement powers available if those permitted development rights are exceeded. There is the possibility of entering into legal agreements should that be necessary, but that's not an issue that arises in relation to the consideration of this application.
Thank you. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief because a lot of what I was going to say has been said already by those that spoke. I will say that what concerns me the most about this application is the permanent nature of these glamping pods. Earlier on this summer, I stayed in a glamping tent, and it was lovely. It was really nice. And after I left, I was in full knowledge that that tent would be struck at a certain time of the year, returned back to its previous state, and could be erected again in the following year. This is the AONB, this is a permanent structure. If these were houses, bungalows, how would we look at this application? But in actual fact, they're permanent, and pretty much that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Darren, do you wish to say anything? You're on mute, my love.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I mean, this isn't my case, and I've listened quite intently as you've gone through this. I mean, taking the view that if these were replacements for the existing caravans, I could say that there would be no real intensification of use, but obviously it is a question of how we control this and whether it's appropriate. Like I say, I think the route isn't ideal. I can see that, and it's quite reasonable to say that. I would agree with the objection on an intensified use, but obviously take a view that if there's no intensification use, then our objection really would be quite moot. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Right, so we have before us the recommendation on page 15, which is for refusal of the application under the reasons as given. So have I a proposer for refusal of this application? Councillor Kershaw. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Heinrich. We go to the vote. This is roll call vote. So 4 against, abstain.
Okay, so for the vote for refusal of the application, so Councillor Brown.
Sorry, Matt. 4.
Councillor Fisher,
4.
Councillor Grove-Jones,
4.
Councillor Heinrich,
4.
Councillor Holiday,
4.
Councillor Kershaw,
Against.
Councillor Lloyd,
4.
Councillor Mancini-Boyle,
Against.
and Councillor Withington.
Against.
So that's 6 in favour of refusal and 3 against.
We've got 1 abstention, I believe.
Sorry, which was the abstention? Apologies, yeah, she's not voting.
And just not voting. Right, so this has been approved, refusal for the reasons as given. I would suggest that the applicants have a word with Councillor, with Officer Rowson afterwards.
Through you, Chairman, my suggestion will be that our case officer contacts the agent and the applicant, and we have a careful discussion about any representation of the case and the areas where mitigation may be extended or offered. The aim is to assist this local business and try to bring forward a positive outcome. Unfortunately, today the committee have been unable to support the current proposals. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. You're very welcome to stay, or if you'd like to depart. Let's hope it's a little warmer than it was this morning when I came out. Right. We now go to our second application. This is on page 17. Holt PF/21/2573. And this is presented by Officer Smith. Jamie, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everybody. I'm presenting item 9 on the agenda, which is application reference number PF21/2573 on pages 17 and 22 of your agenda reports pack and accompanying slides. Firstly, there is an update in respect to the refusal reason. It's been observed that policy CT6 has been quoted within the refusal reason, which relates to parking provision. However, this is incorrect and should actually refer to policy CT5 relating to the transport impact of new development. The application seeks permission to extend the existing bungalow of number 21 Peacock Lane to include a first floor extension and a front and rear single story extension, which will create a 3-bedroom dwelling. The application also proposes an additional 1.5 story 3-bedroom dwelling in the rear garden of the application site. The scheme provides for parking and manoeuvring for a minimum of 2 cars for each dwelling, residential amenity space and bin storage. Additionally, the application is also a resubmission of a previous scheme at the site, which was withdrawn due to concerns regarding scale of development, impact upon neighbouring properties and highways objections. Turning to the prints of the proposed development, the proposed site is located in an established residential area within settlement boundary of Holt, where the principle of residential development is considered to be acceptable and complies with local plan policy. In terms of the wider application merits, members will have reviewed the report and accompanying slides, so I will not go through these in detail, but we'll be happy to answer questions later. I will, however, discuss the following main issues arising from the development. In terms of design, whilst the site is situated within the Holt and Glaven Valley Conservation Area, there is a mix of dwellings which vary in size, scale, styles and materials and contains other infill types of development. Therefore, given the mixed form of development in the immediate context and the overall design approach, the application is considered acceptable in this regard. There were no objections raised by the Conservation Design Officer, and officers therefore consider that the scheme is acceptable with regards to design and would not result in harm to either the Glaven Valley or Holt Conservation Area. In terms of the impact on residential amenity of nearby dwellings, objections have been received regarding overlooking, loss of privacy, overbearing and overdevelopment of the adjoining neighbours. The assessment of amenity is considered on pages 20 of the agenda's reports pack, and the presentations at slide 10 and 17 also provide a photographic assessment of the site context, which includes the neighbouring development where infill types of development are observed, including a high level of indivisibility between existing dwellings and gardens. The presentation slides at numbers 5 to 8 and 19 to 21 also provides clarity regarding the comparative layout and scale of existing and proposed development in relation to both Regency Court Flats to the north and Pippin's Lodge to the south. The proposed scale is considered acceptable given the context of the site and the scale of neighbouring dwellings. The scheme has taken on board concerns from the previously withdrawn application where the two-storey extension for plot 1 and the position and scale of the new build for plot 2 have been redesigned to have regard to the neighbouring dwellings, in that the building line of the two-storey elements are respectful to the gable of Regal Court in respect to plot 1 and Pippin's Lodge in respect to plot 2. In order to mitigate concerns regarding overlooking to Pippin's Lodge to the south, amended plans were received which reconfigured the internal layout of the first floor of plot 2, whereby the bathroom has been positioned closest to the southern boundary with the neighbour and will be obscure glazed and right side hung. Additionally, a central window to be fixed shut. This reconfiguration will also reduce the potential to result in loss of privacy and overlooking to Cockaday Court to the west. On balance and having regard to the context of the existing and wider site, officers consider this relationship between dwellings to be acceptable and would not result in significant overlooking, overbearing, loss of light or overshadowing, and therefore acceptable with regards to impacts on residential amenity. Turning to the effect on highway safety, the highways officer considers that Peacock Lane at the junction with Cromer Road is substandard, where the intensification of use of this access would result in a highways objection to the proposal. Norfolk County Council have consistently resisted further development from Peacock Lane due to the severity of the substandard nature of the Peacock Lane, where it's not considered possible to make any suitable improvements to the inadequate junction and narrowed carriageway. To build on this last comment, the suitability of Peacock Lane has been assessed as part of the LDF process of the local plan moving forward and has been continually discounted to support housing development off Peacock Lane due to the substandard access with Cromer Road. To conclude, the officer recommendations one of refusal on highway grounds as detailed on page 22 of the report. The highways officer is in attendance today if there are any questions relating to the highways element of the proposal. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I conclude my part of the presentation.
Thank you, Officer Smith. I now go to speakers. We don't have any parish or town speaker. No objectors. I just have one supporting speaker, Mr. Stephen Roberts. Yes, Mr. Roberts? Oh, if you'd like to come up, please. Parish or town, the local member is Councillor Perry Warnes. When you've spoken, then her statement will be read out. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, if you'd like to push the second little number in, just push one and we'll see if you get second one in from the right. That's it. And you have 3 minutes, Mr. Roberts.
My name is Stephen Roberts. I'm the applicant at 21 Peacock Lane, Holt. The proposals have been refined several times as set out in the officer's report, and any concerns raised by neighbours have been addressed. All planning and design issues have been resolved with the proposed scheme deemed acceptable in terms of site-specific impacts. If the scheme is acceptable in respect of site-specific design, then how can it be proposed for refusal? Highways have raised an objection in principle to any proposal that would result in additional traffic using Peacock Lane, and also regarding accessibility, because Peacock Lane is an old road with sections that do not have a defined pedestrian footpath. The justification for this in principle objection is that when considering the allocation of land west of Woodfield Road for approximately 100 dwellings in the site allocation DPD 2011. It was determined that Peacock Lane could not serve this major development and the site should therefore be accessed by Clyde Road. That conclusion on its own is fair enough, but we are proposing one additional dwelling, not 100. Furthermore, it is not suggested that this single dwelling will itself cause harm. Indeed, there are no recorded accidents on Peacock Lane, nor at the junction with Cromer Road, within the accident public records compiled over the past 20 years. The junction with Cromer Road provides adequate visibility, and cars using the junction slow down and carefully navigate the geometry of the historic street pattern. The National Planning Policy Framework states that the proposals should only be refused if the proposals result in severe impact. One additional dwelling at 21 Peacock Lane, adding 6 daily trips over the existing 708 estimated trips, equates to 0.85% increase in vehicular movements. So the proposals result in less than 1% increase in traffic movement using the junction with no recorded accidents that already serves 100 dwellings, not including the sorting office near the junction of Cromer Road. This stark illustration of actual impact should prove my point that there is no harm arising. So if there is no severe impact on the wider road network, then under MPPF paragraph 111, the development should not be refused. In respect of accessibility, there is no issue with the site itself, and the existing and proposed dwellings will of course meet the requirements of Part M of the building regulations for disabled access. This objection has been raised because Peacock Lane is an old road with sections without a footpath. Apparently, this now rules out any development despite the fact that over 100 existing dwellings are served perfectly well by the existing road network. If you take this to a logical conclusion, no development can ever be served off a historic road system.
I'm sorry, Mr. Roberts, that you have had your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, if you'd just like to return to your seat. I think we've got the gist of what you're saying. As the local member is not here in person, Officer Rowson is now going to read out her written statement.
Bear with me, Chairman and members, while I take off the mask and apply the goggles. There we are.
Okay.
This is a statement from Ward Member Georgie Perry-Warnes, received yesterday through our member services team, and I'm speaking on that statement verbatim. Since withdrawing their first application, Mr. and Mrs. Roberts and their architect have worked closely with the planning team at North Norfolk District Council to bring their proposals into compliance with planning policy. They took all the advice they were given and acted on it. They made significant amendments wherever it was indicated that they were needed. This application is very important to their future and to their family life. And this was reflected in every effort they have put in to listening to the planning officer and accommodating the policy requirements. The application is not to build a financial amenity. This is to build a family home for the children to be close so that they can support each other's physical and mental well-being and be together in difficult times. There is much infill on Peacock Road, as described in the officer's report. Indeed, this application mirrors a development at number 19. It hardly seems fair that several of those who have undertaken similar developments themselves have written letters of objection. It is important that our planning process is consistent and fair. Nonetheless, the officer's report reflected the effort that Mr. and Mrs. Roberts have made, and the application is indeed in compliance with policy in all respects, bar highways. Their revised plans addressed issues that highways have indicated that were of concern, as highways have acknowledged, and they themselves state in that report that the remaining shortcomings could also be addressed, perhaps via conditions. The highways objection does not seem proportionate in grounds for denying Mr. and Mrs. Roberts their right to family in accordance with MPPF 8. I assume that's para 8 on this basis. I was also quite astonished to see that there was a recommendation for refusal from the planning officer on such flimsy grounds. I have been baffled by Highways application of policy in Holt before, when they allow large developments on Hempstead Road and deny that there is any impact when there quite clearly is. So it seems particularly baffling that they now identify Highways impact when a single household wants to do the same thing that their neighbours have done countless times before. Same road, same junction, as I said before, it doesn't seem fair or consistent. Of course, pedestrian and disabled access is crucial, but this can be remedied by conditions, surely. The other reason for Highways objection is presented as a failure to prove a negative, which is famously difficult to do. If this was framed as something proactive, they could implement this, and that may be attached as a condition. As I've highlighted, Mr. and Mrs. Roberts and their architect have demonstrated a total willingness to do anything within their capability to remove the obstacles presented by Highways. In my opinion, the balance of this report and recommendation is off. The application is presented in positive terms throughout, reflecting its compliance with local policy. Mr. and Mrs. Roberts need the benefits of having their family near them, an issue which has been starkly highlighted by recent lockdowns. This is very important for their future. They have done everything asked of them. Please allow this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Officer Rowson. We now go to the floor. Can I have some speakers, please? Councillor Lloyd, Councillor Withington, Councillor Brown, and Councillor Heinrich. Is that right? Okay. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually going to vote against the recommendation, and I feel this should be approved. Not because of any of the emotional arguments that have been made today, but because I don't see sufficient reasons to not approve it. I will, just before I close, I will express a little bit of disappointment that we're replacing one property with two larger ones, and we are in a climate emergency. I would have liked to have seen some more environmental considerations as part of this development. I know they're not yet considerations for planning, but it would have been very nice if they could have considered the impacts of the additional properties, heating and loss of heat through the homes, generating electricity, etc., etc. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Councillor Withington, Liz.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify that the designation in relation to no further development is as a result of the 100 properties that were originally put forward for that, the end of Peacock Lane, because it seems a strange or difficult designation when it covers for 100 and also 1.
Thank you. Are you going to speak to that, Philip?
I think, Chairman, first I want to hear from the Highways officer about those two issues, and then we will fill in behind with Noel and myself and the case officer talking about the planning policy implications.
Okay, fine. Darren, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To answer that question first, no, the decision about Peacock Lane is something that was reinforced by the LDF consultations. It wasn't done because of that. Peacock Lane has been a site where the only development that has come forward has been replacements. we've had probably one new house on Post Office Court. Regal Court was obviously a replacement for the cinema. We've had, you know, various bits and pieces, but ultimately the issue revolves around the junction and the suitability of that junction to cater for A, additional traffic, and B, for additional footfall. So in terms of this site, there's quite a lot of history that hasn't been discussed. The neighbouring property was actually granted consent on about the 5th application, as I understand it. It went to appeal in 2007 and was refused, with the highway inspector citing concerns about the junction. And the reason it was consented later was that there was actually a section of footpath implemented which ran from number 19 towards the junction and actually provided a pedestrian benefit. So the mitigation measure was what made the development at the rear of number 19 acceptable. That's not something that is feasible with this application, nor has been offered. And I would like to go back to the MPPF, which has been referred to as the reason why this shouldn't be refused. And actually paragraph 111 says development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety, or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe. Paragraph 1112 says, within this context, applications for development should A, give priority first to pedestrian and cycle movements, both within the scheme of pedestrian and neighbouring areas. Point B, address the needs of people with disabilities and reduced mobility in relation to all modes of transport. Point C, create places that are safe, secure and attractive, which minimise the scope for conflicts between pedestrians, cyclists and vehicles. Avoid unnecessary street clutter and respond to local character and design standards. This is the reason why we would resist this development, because it doesn't meet paragraph 112 points A, B and C. And I'd just like to say that, you know, obviously the concerns revolve essentially around the junction, which is very constrained, very restricted, with limited ability to improve the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren.
Chairman, this is clearly a development management issue. It is a single planning application you are considering today. You're not considering local plan allocations. That will be done through the good auspices of the Working Party and Councillor Brown, of course. So from our point of view, we can only talk with any expediency about individual applications. You've heard from the highways officer why one decision was made on an adjacent plot, which related to a sustained campaign of applications and a final offer of mitigation. In that instance, that mitigation was considered appropriate and was material to that decision making. In this instance, Chairman, no mitigation is offered. Instead of mitigation, there is a supporting letter from a planning consultant that talks about highway safety and rebuts those issues. That is available on our public access system. So from our point of view, Chairman, you are being requested to review a position where the applicant contends that there is no significant highway safety impact for the reasons laid out in front of you today and the information and data he has given to you. And clearly the county councillors, our highways authority, are saying there is a significant impact even from a single dwelling. This is a matter of balance for members today, and where they see that balance lying between the professional advice of the highways officer and the representations made to you by the applicant today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? Okay, Liz. I now go to Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm going to speak against the recommendation from the officer to refuse the application, so I will be seconding it with Councillor Lloyd. And the reasons I take that position are basically an interpretation of CT5, which I'm glad was corrected, because when I read the report and looked at CT6, I thought, no, something not quite right here. Because I don't think the impact is going to be so severe. as to put the highway safety at the junction in jeopardy. I know that junction quite well myself. It's so constrained that it actually acts as a natural speed restriction and safety measure in itself. People locally are very used to taking care, and it does concern me that the highways officer, Mr. Mortimer, doesn't feed into his analysis the accident statistics at that junction. I don't believe that any significant additional improvements to the highway would make such a change in mitigation in terms of improving safety. I think we're in the territory of the rule of de minimis here, and for one actual additional dwelling to trigger what CT5 is really designed to do in terms of larger developments. I just don't see the impact as being severe, and therefore I support the applicant's application to develop on this occasion. And that's rare for me because I'm going against a strict interpretation of our policies. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Paul, you want to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, a difficult one. The only reason for refusal is a value judgment or an opinion on whether a small number of additional vehicle movements will create an additional issue on that junction with Cromer Road. Now, any of us who know the centre of Holt know that there are far more difficult areas than that junction. So I accept that the street is narrow, but somebody pushing a wheelchair down it may have a problem. The car comes the other way, down on the lower end of the lane. You have to ask yourself how often that's going to happen, whether there is any real additional danger. I think not. I can't support refusal. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As someone who's driven up and down Peacock Lane many times visiting patients, I do think it's a very unsafe road with a lot of danger to it, especially at the intersection. So I would support refusal of this.
Thank you. You're supporting the refusal, yeah, the officer's recommendation. Councillor Holiday. Do we have a seconder for this refusal? Councillor. You hesitated there. Well, I will support second it. Yes, Philip, you wish to speak before we go to the vote.
I'm sorry to speak again, members, but I guess I'm sort of in similar territory to the issue of departure that I spoke with you about earlier today. You have considered professional advice from the highways officer here. That advice is not to be taken lightly. It should be given significant weight. You have a statement from the applicant. You have the representation made to you today. In addition to that, I would suggest, Chairman, that the issue of road traffic accidents is a matter members may wish to hear from, under your discretion again, from the highways engineer. And as to that issue of road traffic incidents, against the matters of design and constraints that are given on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. You actually, that was exactly what I was going to ask, Darren. If you do have the traffic accidents and incidents, we were given a preview of this lane at the pre-meeting we had, and it certainly does narrow down. There's some pathway down a portion of the road, and then it narrows as it gets to. Over to you, Darren, if you have those statistics.
Just looking for the accident data at the moment. Bear with me. Doesn't want to turn on. Right. No, there is no accidents out there, but from a highway safety point of view, a lack of accidents doesn't necessarily make a junction safe. Our view is obviously it is restricted, and by that nature it really makes it unsuitable for whilst this is only one dwelling. I think the potential could be higher. That's all I would say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Mortimer. So we have a proposal to accept the recommendation for refusal. Proposer is Councillor Holiday, seconded by myself. We'll have a roll call, please. This is for refusal.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Fisher. Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
For.
Councillor Grove-Jones.
For.
Councillor Heinrich. Councillor Holiday. Councillor Kershaw. Councillor Lloyd.
Against.
Councillor Mancini-Boyle.
Against.
And Councillor Withington.
Against.
So that's 6 against and 4 in favour.
So the officer's recommendation has been, thank you, I couldn't think of the words, has not been carried. Thank you. Do you wish to speak, Philip, on this?
I think, Chairman, I can only outline the other options that our committee has in front of us today. Clearly, one option may be to defer the application if further clarification on any issues that are required. You may seek independent highway advice. Clearly, we have competing opinions. We have data sets that are agreed, but the issue of highways safety still remains in the mind of officers and the council's advisor at the county council. That could be an option that could be pursued by members. The alternative option, of course, is for members to consider a different recommendation, which can be for an approval of this case on the material merits of the case that are seen. Members have debated the issue of highway safety today, and I've heard from members that some members are persuaded that there is no substantive issue on highway safety based on the low levels of vehicle flows associated with the improvements to the existing dwelling and the new dwelling proposed. That may be an issue that members wish to be clear on in giving a reason to depart from the recommendation that is given, and we should be clear in making an alternative recommendation that there is a reason to do so. So that is the first issue if members wish to differ from the officer recommendation. The second issue then, Chairman, would be to look at a series of conditions. Clearly, we have standard conditions that are applied to single plot developments, matters of facing bricks, detailing of drainage, matters of landscaping and layout. On top of that, Chairman, I would suggest that if members are minded to recommend any additional conditions, we're particularly about disabled access to these dwellings, then that may be a consideration that members wish to add. In addition, Chairman, I would suggest that if members are minded to raise a recommendation to approve that it's carried, that in this instance, Chairman, that officers agree with you and your Vice Chairman a list of conditions that can be reasonably applied to the recommendation if it should go in favour. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Our legal beagle would like to say something here.
Again, endorsing Officer Rose's general advice and endorsing the earlier comments of Councillor Brown. Decisions must be taken in accordance with policy unless material considerations indicate otherwise. There has been reference to social well-being as a material consideration in relation to this matter. And while social well-being has the capacity to be a material consideration as part of sustainable development, there's a social element as well as environmental and economic. The individual circumstances of an applicant are not a material consideration. And so while you've heard one justification for the additional dwelling being for family use, that is not a factor that is before you in coming to any decision. As Officer Rowson has outlined, having rejected the officer's recommendation, the application is now before you to take a decision and the options available to you have been fairly comprehensively outlined. Thank you.
So, does anybody wish to speak on this? You have a right to defer for conditions, or we stand with the decision as it has been taken. Is that correct, Philip?
Chairman, the members of the committee have voted to not support the proposed recommendation from officers. So I would expect that we would be looking at either an agreed reason to defer, or alternatively a proposal that should seek a reason to approve and give a suggestion of any further conditions that may be added to that reason to approve that members would then vote on. It would be an alternative proposal. Thank you.
Could I have your reasons for refusing the officer's recommendation then, please? Don't forget this has to be in approval with yes, Nigel.
Well, to me, it's the absence of any data to suggest that the junction has had any accidents, and in which case we're relying on the perception of safety. The fact that there haven't been any accidents reported at that junction suggests that it isn't actually unsafe, despite what perceptions people might have about it. And I'd be quite happy to support approval of that on that basis, if I can. And I'm quite happy to let officers put the right controls in place too. Under your
Anybody
guidance.
else got anything to say about this? Yes, Andrew.
Yes, I would second Councillor Lloyd's proposal on this. I think we've read the report. It is policy compliant in several respects in terms of its design, its impact, its the materials, its street scene, and everything that goes with that. It was purely, I think, recommended for refusal on the strength of the submission from the highways officer. And I don't think the impact of the development is so significant as to cause a severe outcome for traffic movements along Peacock Lane in accordance with policy CT5. And therefore I would recommend that we vote to approve this today rather than defer it. I don't think we need to mess about deferring it. We need to approve it, and we need to make sure that the conditions are correct. I'm all in favour, obviously, of making sure that conditions for disabled access and for energy efficiency as a sort of, predicting what is going to come down the tracks through national legislation in the years to come. If we can possibly max out on energy efficiency conditions for the build, then so much the better. But I think we need to make a decision, Chair.
Okay. So you're saying we stick with the approval for refusal?
No, I'm saying,
the approval for
that we should deal with this and recommend committee approval. Unless
okay, fine. Can I just say something? I am always, as you know, I tend to support the officers with their professional recommendations, etc. And the only thing that slightly concerns me with this is when we do turn against the officers' recommendations, is that once we give approval to this development, it doesn't mean that it would stop there. Obviously, every case is taken on its merit, but there are likely to be other houses or buildings in the lane which will come up and ask for building in their back gardens. That's it. That's what happens all around us at the moment, but each application is taken on its merits. So the reason for refusal of the officer's recommendation is that no accident data has been put forward by Highways to suggest that there are any, there have been any fatal accidents at the junction, I'm sorry, Darren, into Holt. Is that correct?
Through you, Chairman, I think the member debate and discussion relates solely to this application and not to any alternative proposals or indeed any local plan allocation or larger schemes that come forward. We heard significant concerns about any additional substantive volumes of traffic associated. So I would caveat that my understanding from Councillor Lloyd is that that would relate to this application and the flows of traffic associated purely with it. Indeed, as you said, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we content with this now? Richard, you're not content. Look at this.
No, I am content. It's just a point that could ease the situation, and that the road is narrow. We know that there's no footbridge, so it acts fundamentally as a shared space. And I think that's probably why there have been no accidents. Could a sign to that effect be put up at the end of the road to alert drivers that it is a shared space? Thank you.
I don't know who does that.
I would suggest that would be a matter for the Highways Authority to put up any formal sign. Any other sign would have to be obviously addressed by the applicant, but my suggestion would be any signage would be a matter for the Highways team to consider. So I would defer to the County Council on that matter, Chairman.
Okay. Did you wish to speak on that, Darren, or are you content with that?
I'm just looking at the site now. I mean, it may be feasible. There's not a lot of space. There's existing cul-de-sac sign there already, and I think we struggled to get another one on there. I mean, it's something we could look at, certainly. Whether there is actually space for it is another question. It's just going to put another post in there, I think. So
okay, Darren.
It's possible, but we'd need to look into it, I think.
Right, thank you.
Chairman, through you, we'll add an informative to any decision that matter should be pursued at the recommendation of this committee. We can't insist because it's a matter that stands beyond planning control and is with the highway. So we'll add an informative. Jamie, please take note.
Chair, through you, can I just ask the Highways officer if it's a give-way junction or a stop junction? I'm just trying to, and if it is a give-way junction currently, shouldn't it be upgraded to a stop junction?
Darren?
It currently is a give-way junction, looking at it. I don't know whether it should be a stop junction, because the stop junction is where the visibility emerging is restricted. The issue here is more about the width and the capacity rather than the junction emerging from the junction itself. So, but certainly I could take some advice on that from our safety team and see whether that's something they would consider.
Thank you.
Well, if the applicant supports that, that's mitigation in itself.
Right. Does the applicant support this? I don't know.
Chairman, that would appear to me to be an off-site highways issue that would be a matter of professional discussion between highway engineers at the county council. And if we were to include some form of Grampian style condition that this should become a stop junction, then I think that may be something which is beyond the applicant's control. So I think we have to leave the highways engineers to discuss that, Chairman. And if possible, possibly the highways engineers can advise me as your assistant director, and then I can update this meeting through additional information at a later meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that okay, Darren? Okay, fine. Right, so have we talked out now? Yes? So the actual decision is that the recommendation to refuse has been set aside, and we are allowing the development of this extra property. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to Mr. Roberts and Pardon?
Sorry, you haven't, yeah.
Oh, you haven't voted? Do you know, I definitely need to go away, don't I? I need a holiday. Yeah, I think we do. We'll all go off to somewhere really hot. Beautiful. I do apologise. Let's have a vote then. Roll call.
Okay, so this is for the proposed approval of the application subject to conditions. Councillor Brown,
For.
Councillor Fisher, Councillor Fitch-Tillett,
Against.
Councillor Grove-Jones,
Against.
Councillor Heinrich,
For.
Councillor Holliday,
Against.
Councillor Kershaw,
For.
Councillor Lloyd, Councillor Mancini Boyle, and Councillor Withington. So that's 6 in favour and 4 against.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your attention. This is a difficult one. It's not often we go against officers' recommendations, and it was a sticky wicket. So, Mr. Roberts, you have the right to build your property. Thank you. If you'd like to leave the chamber, because we're just going to go into general business. Whew. That's the first time since I've been chair that we've actually voted against the officer's recommendation. And I did say now that there's nobody in that I did think it was going to be a sticky wicket.
You're still live, Chairman, remember.
Oh. Okay. Let's pass on to which one are you going to do first? Do you want to do the appeals
On the agenda, Chairman, it's the performance issues
Yeah,
first.
do you want to do
So
that
we'll
first?
take the performance
Okay.
first, if that's okay with members. Members, as you can see at item 10, we continue to report on a monthly basis on performance. I outlined at the start of the report the national standards that we should look to, and also where you can see some benchmarking through the MCHLG, although I'm probably in error there. I need to update with the most recent name of the ministry today. What you will see, Chairman, is at para 3.2 a report that talks about the number of major decisions that have been made in time. There is an error I need to report to you, Chairman. It is an error which is a positive error. We note in the October to December quarter, our current quarter, that we have one decision that is out of time. There is no decision out of time. That's been erroneously reported to you members. My apologies. So our figures actually stand at 81%. And what we're doing in that case with the updated data is effectively maintaining our position in terms of majors performance. So we stand at 81% as against a national standard of 60. Clearly, we strive to be in the region of 90 to 95% members. And I can report to you that my discussions with the majors team and the development manager are positive, that I understand we have 5 major decisions coming forward within the next month or so, and that all of those decisions are currently under agreed extensions of time, and they are subject to the completion of legal agreements that are expected to be concluded positively. So members, as you can see, if we are to achieve 5 positive decisions as against 38 decisions in total, that will have a significant positive effect on my reporting to you in January. So I'm hopeful and expectant that our figure of 81% will increase substantively by the next time I report to you on majors. Now then, members, turning towards non-major performance, this is the vast majority of applications that we see going through the District Council. And as you can see at the table on page 25, currently, through the quarters to date this year, we have determined 1,881 cases That's a significant volume of applications. On top of that, members, we're also determining a huge number of conditions discharge applications. We're giving pre-application advice. We're determining notifications that aren't reported under here for conversions and changes of use. So what you're seeing there, members, is a significant body of work. And what I can report to you, as you can see later on in this report, is that in the current quarter, we're standing at 92% of all of those decisions actually being in time or under extensions of time. In the section below, you can see that November was a pretty good month. We issued 110 decisions. 50 of those were in the 8-week period without agreed extensions. 51 decisions were under extensions of time, and only one of those decisions was not reached within the agreed extension. What I'm looking at, members, is a trend where you are seeing significantly more decisions being made within the natural 8-week period. I'm really pleased to report that, members, on top of the significant gains in terms of hitting our agreed extensions of time. There's a great deal to be positive about there, but I think when you look at the table on page 25, you will see that there are 3 very difficult quarters there. I've labelled them Q5, 6 and 7, and it will take a little while for our figures to improve beyond that 78% 2-year average. Our team are endeavouring to increase the number of decisions and endeavouring to increase the number of decisions that we make within that 8-week period. Positive reporting this month, and I can tell you, members, that December also looks good as well. I had figures of 97% last week and 95% the week before on substantive numbers of decisions being made. What I can also tell you, members, is that our figures in terms of appeals, where we look at the quality of decision making, not just the speed, are equally important. And as you can see at paras 3.7 and 3.8 of this report, our figures remain substantively good. We're at just over 2% of overturns on majors appeals. Still, that single majors appeal, I'm afraid, at Holt, members, is creating that 2% bump. And that what I can tell you, members, is that we are 0.59%, 0.59% on appeals determined against the council on non-major decisions. Our figures on both of those should be a national standing of 10%. So the quality of decision making through this committee and by officers is very good. We're in a good place in terms of the quality of decision making. What I'd also say, members, is please look at section 4, where we look at caseloads and other influencing factors, and I'll be very pleased to take any questions, Chairman, on this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, a bit quicker on the draw there, wasn't I, Madam Chair? First of all, Philip, I'd like to thank you for the fact that you've actually got your staff up to full capacity, which must make your life a load better. And on 4.4, I'm glad you took on board, perhaps not just my advice, but the fact that I asked your officers to engage with consultees and customers, which is a great improvement. So I'd like to thank you for that.
Adjusting my garments and my glasses. Chairman, I'm delighted to hear that, and thank you very much for those kind comments. I'll make sure those are returned to the officers and also to our consultees who are striving to respond as quickly as they can. These are difficult times. We're under a great deal of pressure from external factors, so your kind words are much appreciated. Thank you, Chairman.
Richard.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a comment. It's very pleasing to see how many applications going in the 8 weeks. That's something we've been striving for, and it's a great step forward. I'm really pleased to see that the staffing is being addressed, and I am aware of the amount of applications we've had come through. So this really is a step forward. I'd like to thank the officers for their hard work. It's excellent. Thank you.
Yes, and I'd also like to say thank you, because they it has been an extremely difficult time, and we've had all sorts of stops and starts and officers leaving and trying to recruit, etc. And as we do know that nationally, planning officers are in short supply. So please convey all of our thanks to the officers. I think, is that okay for everybody if I pass that on to the officers and the consultees, and say that we do appreciate that it has been difficult. Thank you. And now you're going to go on to the famous appeals section.
I will in one moment, Chairman. I think
sorry, Andrew, you
note
wish
for the
to speak.
committee also.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair, through you. Can I just, with my Chair of the Planning Policy and Built Heritage Working Party hat on, echo the comments made by the committee, and to thank the Planning Department for the the improvement in the performance, in spite of the staff challenges which have been particularly affecting the planning policy team of late. And it is much to their credit that they're ready to go out to Reg 19 on the 10th of January. So it's just to endorse what has been said already, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Chairman, once again to say thank you very much for those kind comments. I'd also underline, Chairman, that we are looking at the return of Joe Medler to the development management team in January. So we will have additional resource with Joe's return as a senior planning officer at that time. There will be discussion about where that additional capacity can be put within the team. Obviously, we'll note, members, that we do have a vacancy for backfilling with Russell Stock's promotion to a team leader in the majors team. So we are hopeful and expectant that we can report again positive numbers in January and confirm for you, members, that our numbers are increasing in terms of members of staff in the team. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we still have one or two vacancies in the planning policy team, though, don't we? Which I know we don't normally talk about here, but I think it has caused some.
That's correct, Chairman. We're looking at a recruitment campaign that I'll be assisting Mark Ashwell with as we turn into January in the new year. But the team will be able to get that Regulation 19 consultation out in time, and we are expectant that, as I say, the recruitment campaign will start in earnest in January.
Thank you. Right, if you'd like, I'd like you to continue with our famous reports, as I say.
Thank you, Chairman. Agenda item 11 talks on appeals. We normally go through section by section. I see no reason to depart from that today. In the appeals section, you'll notice a number of new appeals that have been returned. We've got 4 appeals there. I'll be happy to take any queries or questions on those new appeals submitted.
Any questions?
Thank you, Chairman. So moving on to the long-standing cases, we have the case in terms of inquiries and hearings at Cly, the case for Arcady. The appellant and the district council are in negotiation with regard to a revised appeal hearing date. We had an offer made by the inspectorate for the first week of March. I regret to say, Chairman, that the appellants have declined that date, saying that their appeal team are not available for that date. We are in discussion with the appellants with an aim to try to secure the first appeal date that is available with the planning inspectorate and the appellants. Clearly, Chairman, we are disappointed and we want to take a decision forward on the applications we currently have at Arcady as soon as possible. But also, if those applications aren't received favourably by the Development Committee, then we will, Chairman, look towards the earliest possible appeal date for the inspectorate, for the appellant, and for the District Council, because we understand the local community, the appellant and the District Council are looking for this matter to be resolved as quickly as possible. So that's the matter of Arcady. Are there any questions on Arcady, Chairman?
Any questions, members? No, no, thank you. Back. Carry on, Philip. Oh, no, anybody? No.
Okay, Chairman, moving forward then, We have the case at Kelling for the demolition of the former care home and the erection of 8 dwellings. Members will remember that was a committee decision that was made. We are looking at an informal hearing date on the 1st and 2nd of February. Officers are exchanging statement of common ground early in January, and we'll be looking at a unilateral undertaking from the appellant to secure appropriate SAC and SPA funding in terms of ecology mitigation. There will also be a mitigation offered in terms of additional funding for cycling and other sustainable transport initiatives by the estate, who are the appellants in that case. At Ryborough, I can report that we are moving towards a virtual hearing for the matter at 19 Station Road with Mr. Buxton and AE Simcock. In this case, Chairman, it's important to note a trend from the Planning Inspectorate with regard to hearings and inquiries. The Inspectorate have said that they will be moving to virtual hearings and inquiries in the coming months because of the COVID risk associated with public meetings. So, Chairman, I can report that that meeting at Ryborough will in fact be a virtual hearing that will be heard in January. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Moving forward, we've got a number of written representations in hand, and those are laying out across pages 30 and 31. Again, Chairman, I'll be happy to take any queries or questions coming forward.
Any questions for Philip? Nope.
Thank you, Chairman. And then finally, we have appeal results at Aylmerton. You can see the appeal was dismissed. At Bodham, the appeal was dismissed. And at Bristol, that case was dismissed. Cromer, a dismissal. And we have dismissals at High Kelling and at Stiffkey. We have one approval at Hindringham for the conversion of an agricultural building to a dwelling, and that was allowed on the basis of an inspector's consideration. An important point to raise with you, members and chairman, is that in this instance, this was a conversion which was allowed under the prior notifications process, and the conversion proceeded despite the building then going beyond the point where it was readily convertible. So, members, the appellant continued with their work and they continued to build out what was effectively the prior notification and not the planning permission for conversion of the building. In this case, Chairman, I can report to you that the planning inspector was persuaded that there was limited harm to the grant of planning permission for the continued development to complete the change of use of that building. This is quite extraordinary, Chairman, and not a position that the council had anticipated. We will be reviewing that matter with the council's legal team, and we will report to you, Chairman, about any precedents that are created in terms of those issues for cases for prior notifications which go wrong, for want of a better phrase, and then are required to come back as change of use applications for conversion of buildings to dwellings. This should not happen, Chairman. In this case, I can report that the inspector took a pragmatic view at Hindringham, and we will review that case and report to you in a little fuller detail in due course. Thank you.
Any questions for Philip at this stage regarding the decisions and appeals? No. Right, then I now go to agenda item 12. We don't need to exclude press and public. And any private business to consider any exempt. Is there anything back here? There's no private business. Therefore, I declare this meeting closed at 11:20. Thank you very much. And you've been awfully good keeping your masks on.